Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title is Catching Trains of Thought. And so, anyone who's experienced trying to catch a train, being late for a train, late for a flight, anything, there's a sense of rush. But there's also this idea that when a thought comes by, you notice it. And so it's kind of like it's very easy to some degree to see like you're trying to catch a train in your outer realms, but in your inner realms, how do you catch a train of thought? What is the relationship of the human being with thought? What is it? What can a human being do behind their eyes? That is the question. And so I thought about this often, and I realized we can't penetrate the mysteries of the concept without studying the context. You know. An example of this would be, for example, someone is talking to you, and what's on the surface, it's like the very direct, the concept, and it's like you're then wondering what is the context, though, in what view of the world is that person speaking, or how, from what eyes do those words travel from, in other words. The way I've kind of experienced it is that, I've never had an interest of a kind of egoic nature to try to do spiritual things. It's like, it's not even considered spiritual. It's just that we've mastered the objective realm, and now that we're getting bored as creatures and we're wondering about our subjective realm and trying to master that. Now, the issue is that in one way we're asking, how does a physical person, catch a train? But if we were to wonder about how does a person catch a train of thought, it's not the person, it's not the physical, existential, it's not the body that's catching the inner train. So that means it's like you're kind of wondering, okay, if I need a physical body to catch a train in front of my eyes, then do I need something to catch the trains behind my eyes? Now, what that thing is a recognition that the self behind your eyes is presence. It's the presence of attention. That means there is no mirror for awareness of awareness. So, if we want to establish a new relationship with our mind, which is really what every movement in the inner realms is, the thing is, like, in front of your eyes, you move as a self in the world. Behind your eyes, your attention evokes the world where the self comes from. That means, in front of my eyes, I see just me standing there, but behind my eyes, I can see myself inclined towards the chaotic or the order. And what does that mean? That means I am seeing a different context to this concept I have. So I'm telling you, the relationship with your inner realms is when you feel like the context, you feel you are the meaning. So in front of your eyes, you move as a body. Behind your eyes, you move as the attention of mind. Now, people who've heard me speak before, you might notice that sometimes, usually I pause in case if I want to kind of cancel out unnecessary noise, but there's moments where in the talk where I feel I mentioned it once, that where I felt like I miss. Usually I catch all the trains of thought. There was one train of thought I felt I missed. Now, what does that mean? That means in while I was giving a talk, in my inner realms, part of the internal cinematic language of imagery that is going on behind your eyes. So, in some sense, it was like there was a river of thoughts, a river of images behind my eyes. I was just like how I'm seeing that tree. It's as if I can close my eyes and still see that tree. Now, where is that tree being seen? That's the inner realms, and how you administer is really, if you are looking for shapes behind your eyes, you will go where ignorance is. But if you just look at what it is, the sort of honesty to see what you are before you die, then you kind of study it. The issue is that some of the most important questions of life, they were they were kind of privatized, and that's when the philosophers failed. Because really, if you look at all branches of knowledge, they all require expansion. That's why there's professors. That means it's not just a branch of knowledge. It's not just what the past said. It's also what the present is, the findings of the present about the future. I want to just suggest that behind your eyes, you move as attention. Okay, and it's an attention to an image or some other subform. It could be even letters. Like when I was younger, my inner realms, I could imagine letters and sentences and stuff, but it wouldn't move on its own. And the reason was because I was looking for, I was too shaped to be something else. I had convinced myself out of other ways that the world could move in my eyes. And that was the issue in my youth. But then it switched. Then the inner film. I became sensitive to it. The moment I realized I'm not a thought, I incredibly became aware of all thoughts in my atmosphere, at least, or in my space of awareness. An example would be kind of like imagine a person who throughout the day, every day, certain amounts of time, throughout their life, they would just go and sit still and have no opinion on everything and see how nature moves. It's when you're born, you're kind of the eyes of nature. Then you evolve into a being of nature. Then you're in nature for so long, you comprehend its dimensions through your being before it's formed. If you were still 10 to 20 minutes and literally had no meditation, nothing, you're just sitting. You go and just sit still for a while. You can notice after a while. I feel just to be safe to make it kind of global, maybe 10 to 20 minutes. For example, for me personally, it's less than 10. It's like it's become very instant for me. But on another level, for some people, maybe 10 to 20 minutes. Just start with 10 minutes, just watching, as if the whole world is a film, and you're just watching how it works, how it moves, why it's moving, how you can comprehend it, how far you comprehend its movement. So, anyways, once the person gets to a certain level of stillness and silence, and you can be the stillness and silence of your moment, you get a slight hypersensitivity to subjective phenomena's movement. And really, the thing the person is noticing, the thoughts come and go. Thoughts are like, I could look at anything and I'll be like, yo, man, I can have endless thoughts on this. That means if you keep your attention somewhere, like a beam, like as if from your eyes, you know what it is? It's like the light is hitting the object, entering your eyes, then from your eyesight hits the object, and the object becomes a subject. So it's as if the light beam goes in our eyes and comes out as subjective consciousness. So you start paying attention to two factors. When your attention or state of mind throughout the day changes, how does it change the speed of how many thoughts come and go? And the next thing is the direction of the thought. That means there's been certain views. It's like sometimes I feel, is it a way I'm standing in the moment? That means like I sometimes change the angle of my view, and suddenly there was as if there was a landscape behind me I hadn't noticed. We feel information is a measurable quantity. What if the phenomena of knowing is not something that could be measured? It's a process. If consciousness is the whole process, then we can't separate a part of it. You know, and that's kind of what's happening in regards to epigenetics and in regards to certain social scientists saying that because there was society and the development of hunter-gatherer tribes, and then eventually it became civilization and what we see now. Because there was all this stuff outside of the being influencing the being is not just their genetics, so consciousness is forever a mystery because we can't measure how social life and living in groups influenced our evolution. You see, so when psychology comes in, that makes the finding impossible. So rationality is limited to the sensory. Beyond the sensory, of course, whatever you find is going to be irrational. Irrationality, it's like believe it or not, let me tell you, from the beginning of life, there was no rationality. Everything was irrational. Then there emerged a creature that was conscious and able to be aware of things to then perceive rationality and the envisionment of logic and sequential thinking and probabilities and whatever. It's as if like here's the thing: we open our eyes in like pretty much. I feel all philosophies kind of are dependent on this. Let's say it's a probabilistic reality, therefore there is cause and effect. Okay, everybody knows cause and effect. Third law of thermodynamics. So this cause and effect, it's important because if we feel that our life is an effect of an unknown cause, all of our knowledge could potentially be hollow. And if we feel what we are now, the New Age community, in other words, where we're all here and now, right? So that's kind of thinking what you are now is actually the causal point of reality, you know? And that's the difference. That's the difference. That means it's kind of like sometimes I wonder if people were bowling like a bowling ball, if evolution was a bowling ball, what set it in motion? Did an extraterrestrial come here and just land a strike and it was like, there we go, consciousness rolled into the human animal. If the moment is the beginning of meaning, then free will defines it. That therefore, the moment could mean anything. If you consider yourself to be an effect, which seems to be the case because the world was here before we were. That means it's like after I was old enough to acknowledge like who my parents were as a child, then years later, then my mind came to see what is the parent of existence. And when you go to Greek mythology, you kind of see, for example, it was Gaia and the sky. I forget the Greek term for sky. Father Sky and Mother Earth. to simplify it. There we go. Here it's gonna, let me see. Oh, there we go. Aran, Auranos. So Gaia and Auranos. So first there was pure chaos before the birth of the universe in Greek mythology. Then there was Gaia. Do you know? Then there was Uranus, and it was the sky. That means human beings are like the children of the sky and the land. Okay, and then there from Gaia and the sky there came Atlas, Rhea, and Kronos. And Kronos is uh, Zeus's what do you call it? Is Zeus's father. So, anyways, the point is that it was some sort of intersection between a certain amount of it to being land and certain amount of it to be the sky. When we look at the sky, there's really two things you see. What do you see in sky? You see space and light. You see a bunch of other stuff like asteroids or whatever, like planets and galaxies. But like when you're on a planet, how it comes across to you is as light and space. So beyond the atmosphere, the most important study is of light and space. For now, or let me say it like this: it's like we can't ignore how the planet has been endlessly getting a tan. Okay, so that definitely has to do with the psychology. And when I look at the morality of human beings, all the films where there's a supervillain and superhero, and I'm like, where did this archetype come from? And then I was like, holy shit, it's darkness and light. When there was light, there was success. Light was the hero. Creatures lived on. When there was darkness, oh no, you know. And so I realized in the darkness, the conditioning of the evolutionary creature is as if it's like the villain. That means it was hard to survive in the dark before fire. I don't even know how creatures survive. Even the case of temperature, that means I have no idea how the caveman survived temperature without any sort of intellectual. I mean, even before the caveman, like with an intellectual ability to interpret. That means I don't. It's so complex. Even when I look at human beings, I was like thinking, okay, what that mystery of childbirth. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of got a sense that we step out of a language of nature. That means there's a biological programming. That means when you look at animals, they haven't studied, they haven't gotten on the job training. They're just acting in accordance to their nature. And really, that's how you catch the train of thought, by abiding by your nature. Because then what is honestly accessible to you comes to you. You know? catching the train of thought of the internal object is kind of like, for example, when I give a talk, what really is navigating my attention is based on what I consider in my inner realms, what I conclude to be important. So my attention moves when I, in the moment, ask myself what is important for me. When I ask that question, suddenly I orient into the presence of my attention. And then that attention is something that it's like when you don't touch it, it's kind of like Lao Tzu behind your eyes in the inner realms. It's like action through inaction. So in your inaction, you notice the internal action. A train is something that is moving. If you're trying to catch it, it's moving before you. And sometimes you might be surprised. I on some level feel that we are actually way more multidimensional than we believe. And in a subtler dimension, there's particles that are not physical, and it's just phenomenology passing through us in a transparent way, if I can say that. So what I mean is that it's like when I sit here and give this talk, it's not just the ideas are just emerging from me alone. It's also emerging from how the environment is being perceived by me. Do you know? And it's also limited to how much I know and how much I care to wonder about the unknown, to see what happens to the past when you push it into the future. You know? Wilder says knowledge is the eye of desire, and can become pilot of the soul. That type of knowledge he's speaking about is the knowledge of the experiencer, and I personally feel like every DNA is different, even though I'm sharing my inner realms with you, even though I'm telling the audience kind of how I perceive it. But everybody's different in regards to their constitution, their relationship, the imagery that comes to mind, the weapons that find their hand in the unknown. What that means is like sometimes you might think you're a certain kind of person, and then in a different state of consciousness totally see dimensions and see blind spots of who you were. When I was listening to Jordan Peterson speak about this, it was kind of like evident that it's as if the psychologist is even saying that once there's a shift, literally, like imagine, all right, let's speak very secular. Imagine your brain is like a projector, okay? So when this projector projects in a way it has never before, it appears to itself as a different self. as a different kind of self. So what it means is a part of your intelligence, it has to keep things stable, and it does this with the vision of the past. And a part of your intelligence has to keep things constantly going, and this has to do with your vision of the future. And so the relationship you have with time and the alphabet of imagery you accept, everybody is different. Everybody in the face of the unknown has a different strength. It has a different inner response to it. That means if you're still interested in the games of the physical, then the immaterial is of no interest for you. But if you feel you have played the games of this material reality for eons, and then suddenly a question may arise that what is the nature of these eyes? What is the nature of the sight that is there? That means I could totally understand that, of course. Like the brain is very crucial. The biological equilibrium of the human being is very crucial. If a person doesn't eat for a couple of days, do you know how irritated their psychology becomes? I got myself into a rough situation when I started giving these talks in 2014. And it was like hundreds of percent. There's people in countries experiencing worse. But for me, it was as if 3 days I hadn't ate, and I was just drinking water, And after the third day, first you notice your body temperature come down, but then you reach a point where you start feeling a sort of shame upon your state. So I would tell you that okay, I don't know how to term it, the sociopathology, or just the erratic behavior we see all around the world, it has to do, one, to a biological kind of state of the person. Then it has to do with what story the person is telling their self, That means it's like you're living in a story the world is telling in front of your eyes, and behind your eyes you're living in a story you're telling. And when you realize actually every person you've met in this life that you think you knew them, when you realize you could never see through their eyes and they could never see through their eyes, you'll suddenly be in awe of how precious and unique humanity's position is in this cosmos. That we have awakened from the dirt to kind of wonder about the light, That's the fascinating thing. There's a lantern. The ancients saw the sun as like this. In certain poetry, they would suggest it as if who's keeping that lantern in the sky, the sun in the sky, And so Mr. Within is saying there, who is keeping that lantern behind your eyes? And when you come to a sort of honest kind, you find an honest world to live in and engage the question that way, then that whatever answer comes is whatever answer you're required to see of the moment. Do you know? That means there's a sort of gentleness that I've seen it in swamis, I've seen it in Zen masters, Zen monks. It's a sort of gracefulness with being sensitive to what life is before it's a definition. This world doesn't have a healthy ethos. Ethos is the term we give to the inspiration of a collective. And what does that mean? That means children are not being born, being fascinated to run towards advancing their civilization. They're being born to stare at a painting that they feel is about to get crushed. And on some level, even though the painting won't get crushed, but they feel we're destroying this kind of the nature of this planet. you know, and at what cost, you know, because something made me mad. Something made me mad that I don't know. I feel if I had kind of been, I don't know how to say it. There is a moment the advanced communicators and the pilots of consciousness of this plane of existence will come to. And it's the moment called of no value. It's the moment of no value, where you will look at everything, every phenomenological thing, whatever is existing, you will look at it and you will suddenly see it is nothing. That regardless of the opinion that man has on the objective realm, do you know, regardless of how the inner realm tries to hold the outer realm lets go first. And for me, I was like, what is the value? What is the value of this system? That we open our eyes, we are temporary, we are like a biological battery that has a certain energy to do a certain amount of things, and then it just gets old and it retires from the game of civilization. Do you know? I feel that if we built an advanced civilization as a species, there would be nothing would be wasted. Do you know what that means? That means if you became old and you were a 90-year-old person in that advanced civilization, you're like, what do I do? How can I help? You know, you would instantly be, how do I say it? It's like every moment of life could potentially have a value for other moments of life. And an advanced civilization allocates the roles properly. And that's very complex because we saw what happened with communism. You know, we saw the endeavors of Marxism, Karl Marx and whatnot, the whole Marxist revolution that took place. This was before I was born even, you know? That the world suddenly transformed and it was like archetypes of power positions and class distinction were being noticed. So, meaningless matter, atoms, and space have somehow, majestically, magnificently evolved into the theater performance of humanity before extinction. And so, where does an advanced civilization begin? That question was a question where it was as if I was lifting up a weight of insight that I had never lifted before. What an advanced civilization does is literally what a kingdom in the middle of war and in a battlefield does. It instantly sees what it has accessible, what is the efficient route, and it's kind of like that moment where the person has a problem and the concept of giving up exists for you. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna realize it's like this. It's like if you can't solve the problem, that means you gotta solve another problem before that. How do I find the way to solve this problem? How do I look at the problem? Do you know how many times I've come to situations in life and the answer wasn't instant? I literally had to be a tree in the moment and just look. I just had to see what was there. And it was like waves. Do you know what I mean by that? And I think the reason it's like waves is because of our biological constitution, the fact that we inhale and exhale. You know? When I inhale and exhale, I'm telling you, in a subtle way, there's a shift occurring to the innards. And I'm telling you, you can only notice, not only, but usually you can notice the speed of the internal object in your exhalation. If you're already acquainted with stillness. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that we shouldn't react like as extreme as the ancient yogis did, where we all want to go into caves and samadhi out of this dimension, Satchidananda out of here. You know, like it's like rather than doing that, it's like the effort of seeing the blind spots of this really, I don't know, it's been around for a while, 4 billion-year-old science project. How would it feel if right now you were the greatest musician alive and you knew that, you had everything about that, yet you didn't know you were the greatest musician? And that's what life is. Don't think it's just walking alone in wastelands of however way your ethnocentrism is poured on you. Study your mind, befriend your intelligence, and start cultivating the honor of efficient victories. And start micro. Start with micro efficient victories. This transforms your life. Because let me tell you, back in the day, the concept of victory, the archetype of I would say the pure man, was that each moment of experience is a battle. Only there's two ways this battleground becomes a playground. One, if you are still a child and you don't see the battlefield, you can't understand the battlefield, you don't hear, you know, the shots being fired, or you have attained mastery over the battlefield, and the battlefield is like a playground. That means the skilled warrior is fighting the other warriors with a sort of comfort and state as if the warrior is walking in a park. You know, imagine someone casually walking in a park and the warrior's so next level that it's like he has a sword, imagine back in the day, and like 12 people come, and the warrior keeps continuing his walk in the park but endlessly blocks and defends and attacks everybody who's there. You know? And I'm trying to tell you, that's a level of mastery where the spirit of not only the art form has embraced you, you are learning about your position to embrace the art form. That means it's like caterpillars have it easy. Caterpillars just go in the cocoon and they're like, "What up?" They become a butterfly, you know. But human beings have to consciously transition because if they don't, they lose the memory of it. That means the person lived so eternally that when death came, death was like, "What is there to take?" Of course, nature has its time. You know, time is a great conqueror. Time is how the winds of evolution remind you that destiny is its own revelation. It's your There's something beautiful about your eyes before you open them, and there's something beautiful after you open them. And if you are aware of that, I don't want to call it inner beauty because it sounds a bit soft, but I'll call you awareness to your inner realms in the most advanced way you can consider it. Nature has its flaws, and man has his laws. As you just get through every battle, you know, you start building these micro victories, and then you suddenly, when you come to the macro victory, the strength of the micros unify. So I am telling you, the process of shifting the human attention, it is learning to live with the nature of the world, and how you have always been the pilot of your attention, even if before you were a concept of a you. That means, honestly, before language, we were just everything. We were this unknown attributeless awareness to a known attribute filled self. I mean, can we all consider this, that before language, there was no story that could be truth? The pre-thought state. You know, life has equilibrium. And what does that mean? That means it's kind of balancing itself out all the time. And those who are conscious of nature, you become part of that field, you know? I mean, like, sometimes I've gone on walks and I've suddenly got this feeling to just go put my palm on a tree. Just simple. Not anything, not any story. Just go. And I would put my palm on the tree, and I just had this feeling, this sort of, as if feeling an ancient friend kind of vibe, you know. There is so much unknown here. And the moment we get obsessed about truth being in one modality, we miss out on all the other modes it is. I feel the issue with the educational system is that it's too full of itself. It thinks it has figured it out. It thinks it is that is the only way. Let me tell you, does it make sense that 8 billion human beings with different DNAs, different conditioning, different backgrounds, different ways of navigating in the world, does it make sense all of them go into one educational system? No, education is being transformed now. Education is becoming is returning. It's like the archaic revival of the wonder to look at the unknown and new. You know, back in the day, the information wasn't there. It was all mystery. And so before language, there was no name. There was no concept. So we are a creature before we were a phenomena. We were attention before. Think of it this way. Like right now, I'm calling myself Mr. Within using this online alias. My real name is Amin. And I'm using these names. Okay? But these names are hovering there. Or they are kind of evoked. Believe it or not, there's this bad idea. There's this verb that I'm not too fond of the verb because it reduces the value of what's actually going on. There's this idea they would say, for example, the word summon. In certain circles of magic, even in games, you see it's like a creature was summoned. And this is what people don't realize. That idea is literally, like, that's just a negative connotation connected to it. What is going on is, again, the inner realms evoke through image. If you're conscious of the image doesn't touch you. If you're unconscious of the image, that's what spells were. There was language that disoriented the attention of the being who wasn't aware that there was something before the language could tell the person what to do. So what does that mean? That means the first person who named themselves, imagine the first person who named themselves. Like, I could totally see how social media back in the day was just each creature made a certain sound and everybody knew it was that creature. You know? It was that kind of like member of the caveman tribe. You know? It's pretty quiet in the chat section today. Really, what can we say about a universe we can't really see its edge? What can we say? We can say all that we can see, and that's really what humanity is. It's a collective vision. And if there was a story that could make the child, imagine the children of the future generations, the child can't wait to wake up. The child can't wait to wake up and run and build an advanced civilization. You see, in uniquely in the Christian, this wisdom comes to us from Christianity. This story, and it's the story of the Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babylon, Babel, and this tower was this idea that all human beings in the world, unified under one language, decided to build a tower that reached the heavens. And human beings were successful. Somehow they did it. Somehow they could see the same reality, see the same vision, see the same advancement, and march towards it as a species, like a group of birds flying in the same direction, in a waveform, wave formation. So what does that mean? Oh, man. The earth in front of your eyes has to be perceived inside the heaven behind your eyes. And once you're aware of the heaven behind your eyes, all that is left is to build paradise on earth. That the advanced communicator looks at the overall aerial view. That means if our species had wings, our exercise would be to just come on the ground and live on the ground, then go back and fly into the sky for some hours in the day. If I had wings, I wouldn't be, sitting around. I'd be giving this talk in the sky. If there's any jetpack creating uh, companies in Silicon Valley, hurry up, goddamn! If the person notices that behind their eyes they are in attention, and present within that attention is in an internal film, an inner film. And once you are aware and observant of that inner film, and you notice how subjective meaning is that inner film being layered upon whatever you objectively see, once the inner realms and the outer realms are freed from one another, and the only way possible is through the middle way, as the Buddha says. You got to witness the chaos and order simultaneously. That means no longer did the chicken come first, or the egg came first, or the chicken, or the egg, or obviously without an egg there would be, you know, uh, you know, the chicken, and so that means there was Purusha and Prakriti are simultaneous. Consciousness and matter are simultaneous. There is a dimension that sees all dimensions without being a dimension, and hilariously, we are the eyes of that. if we can build a civilization that manifests as quick as our thought, then that is a symptom, or we can not a symptom, but I could say that is a true sign of an advanced civilization waking up. Because what is life? I mean, every person who gets out of the door, there is a potential you see in the day, and you walk towards manifesting that. And there's this whole giant community of this law of attraction. You know, people who they feel it's like they're robots, where you go and repeat the language in the mirror 10 times and you'll get it. No, you only attain in this life through journey, and realizing that there's no easy way. It's a journey. That's it. It's a strange place. The universe is an awkward place, guys. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, you know, and extinction seems to be the only problem we need to solve. The advantage we have right now is that imagine every human being to be like a book, and it's a book that the species hasn't read. And so imagine, or even better yet, imagine every person to be a library. And so right now, we should try to connect these libraries, and it's an era of communication. So communication is the most important thing that's going to shift people, because the Stoics realized that the language you embody as your character and behavior is literally that's where the programming for whatever's attracted to you in this life happens. How you hold yourself in your own eyes, and recognizing that your eyes are also the space where matter moves. It is a remarkable realization that awareness is not bound to form, but it is present through it. That means when atoms, become sophisticated, a philosopher sits on a chair wondering where the smoke of his thoughts fades into. The phoenix resurrected from the ashes. Every day we wake up from the ashes of yesterday. And so there is no person, there never was an actor when it's all an action, when it's all a movement. The inseparability of the individual and the collective, that is the fragile atmosphere that language is kept in. Do you know how we have to instantly, I'm kind of feeling like whatever we know as a civilization, as a species, we should quickly treat that as like, okay, that's civilization 1.0, and totally have a new initiative of a totally new, different angle of approach. Because we can't ignore that we are creatures on a rock. These creatures want to travel. This traveling eventually means an infusion of the archaic. So the ancient gets forgotten, technologies get lost, similar to how cultures throughout history, when you look at it, there were no cultures. Nobody had a culture. There were no human beings. But when human beings popped out, they began identifying. It wasn't like the person identified with just his clothes. The land became the person's clothing. The character was based on how the environment was. The pilot piloted in accordance to what the plane of existence provided access. That means you could be the most skilled, the most advanced human being, and yet, if your advanced instrument is not given to you, you can do nothing, and you will be a sort of genius behind the bars of how you had to be an effort to walk towards the world, because civilization is not updated. It's like a fax machine level of a civilization. What can you say? And people are like, what's a fax machine? Some millennials might be like, what's a fax machine? And I'll tell you exactly. It's that old. And you know what? I started laughing, guys. I honestly laughed because I looked at it and I was like, chemistry class back in the day in ancient times was so short. The guy would come into the guy, it's like, what do you want me to say? Earth, air, fire, water, ether. These are the elements. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. Go find a time machine, And so the guy, and so now those same elements have become the periodic table. Isn't that fascinating? And so what is there? That means the children who are born in the future generations, they would have to study more and more and more. Do you know? That means if we want to teach the past to kids, it's just going to be endless. You can be endless. There's no point in it. The educational system should focus on building advanced communicators for an advanced civilization. The only war that human beings have left to fight is not a physical war. It's the test of time, and really that the enemy. You know that there's a saying that says the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let me tell you, there is an enemy to our civilization, and it is how before it sees how great it is, its eyes can close. The unknown. And even though I don't see that unknown as an enemy, but I'm saying if you had to find a way to unify human beings, I mean, in Independence Day, we kind of saw an algorithm to peace. You know, aliens are attacking us, the human beings are peaceful and unify and no judgments on anything. You know, let's get this alien off our turf. The moment the alien's out, all right, you in my land. It's like, no, you know, you in my land. That's politics for you. And let me tell you, for me, let me tell you what's going to save our political system. Technology. Technology is the hidden savior of the political system. Because when technology advances and we realize we can totally live in a different way, we stop living in the way we are. And new dimensions get a chance to breathe on this earth before your eyes close. You know? There's an honor. I'm like, where's that samurai-like honor that I was expecting civilization to give me? And I realized the ethos hasn't been developed. So right now, me and you, just like how we look at the early settlers, for example, I'm in Canada right now. The early settlers, you know, for their time, it was like next level stuff they were doing, kind of, you know, getting syrup from a tree, you know, building a life, building a town. All of these were like next level things. If you look back from how an animal kind of like survived to get this far, and so that's the thing. We are the pioneers of 1,000 years to come, and we are pioneering the language that the children of the future generations will open up their eyes to. And there's only one thing that can be very powerful. That means like it's the power of how an event is in action. For me, poetry doesn't just it's not just something that's on a piece of paper. Poetry is what was the most next level thing that could happen. Because it's boring here on a rock in the middle of nowhere. That's why. You know, it's like they're like, why should we build an advanced civilization? It's like, why not? What else can we do? You know, are we gonna watch movies of an advanced civilization, or are we gonna run towards one? You know, that's the end of it all. That's the most important train of thought to catch. To honor your inner realms, and then you cultivate honor in your inner realms. That means first you gotta trust your physical objective, how you exist in front of your eyes. Once you're content and comfortable and you feel at ease in your objective realms, then it's very easy to pilot in your inner realms. But if you go desire bound, then it's kind of like, I'm telling you, esotericism, I do understand what it was doing, but I'm telling you, it is the rudest way to go towards the unknown, thinking that there's a face beyond that abyss. Oh, that's like literally like it's foolishness maxed out. Because you're giving the thought power. You don't realize power is not a thought. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening so far. 2 people have been listening throughout this. I appreciate the listeners. I'm going to open it up to Q&A if people have questions, and the questions, they can be from 3 angles. You can ask a question about the past, the future, or the present. So it's Q&A. Thanks for listening. So anybody asks a question in the chat section, I'll enter cyberspace and respond to it. Okay. There's a question from Javi. On what foundation would an advanced civilization be built on? First of all, great question. Because you got to go to the head of the snake. You got to see what the most important factor of the idea is and run towards that. And so the foundation is very core because everything else is built on that. So I would say that I began perceiving it in this way where I was like, if we want to hold on to the human biology, because right now people don't realize it. Maybe in like 120 years, like we're gonna be like kind of too connected to computers, you know. So I don't know about that, but but I'm gonna tell you this. I realize it's important to instantly link the biology, the study of biology, and the study of language are going to become the conquerors of education. These two become the most important things to study because these are the two things that the species is right now at war. For me, I realize that I don't know anyone on this planet in regards to who they really are, and on some level, there's not enough time, and you can't know everyone. You know, even it's limited to how much they want to show who they are. So I was like, what do we do? And then I realized what are the basic things, and I was like, what if we start thinking of an initiative where we are going above Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but as a species. And then I thought of the importance of the biology, so I thought that the best way to explain civilization is that it's the great person. That if somebody asks who is the greatest person you can be, it's the greatest your civilization can be. The greatest person is actually the greatest civilization, right? And so the idea of trying to use a metaphor of the same human biology, I would say that then the foundation is that there's a body to civilization, there's a mind to civilization, and there's a soul. And that means we have to assist the health of the body of civilization, which is all those starving people and the resource allocation and whatnot, right? So we have to attend to the body of our civilization, and that requires the health of your own physical existence and the health of the other physical existence, you know. And then, if we were to think of the mind of the civilization, that means how much education is going forth, how the educational system perceives reality, you know, how we feel, what is the maximized things. Right now, the educational system is possessed by the economical sector. That means your education is work, you know. So it's like in the future, I could totally see the infusion of businesses becoming institutions, and educational institutions becoming more like businesses. And we are seeing this everywhere. And everything's being kind of lifted towards a digital platform. So the world is the value of knowledge. It's like we are living at a time where people went to the school. Now we're living at a time where the schools are going towards people, you know, especially through the digital domain. So I would say that it's kind of like implementing Maslow's hierarchy of need. And okay, let me see if I could find the picture in case people don't know what I'm talking about. Let's see what our good old friend Maslow has to say. Okay, there we go. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if we can implement this, in this is literally the solution. So I'm saying that in the image of how we take care of an individual human being, we should design civilization that way, where society is designed just like how our brains are. So just by understanding the medical sciences, we would have an access point to all philosophical systems where we, for the first time as a species, re-sculpted the tree of knowledge into the biological image of man. And so that means when a young child, imagine in the future, learns biology, they will also be able, through all the metaphors of the body, access all the other fields of knowledge. You see? It's how all the branches are coming to one trunk. So Javi, I would say that I mean it's the foundation of anything you build is based on an inner vision. That means Michelangelo says, "I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free." So the true foundation of it is how you see the advanced civilization already behind your eyes, and you attempt to bring it out in front of your eyes. And when we have this occur on a massive level, we will perceive, we will witness as a species the most next level renaissance. The renaissance where a species that had for eons in silence dwelled on this earth now realize it has a stage. You know, I feel it's like evolution was this whole urge for what was inside to get out, you know? And so the ultimate ultimatum of it means that the best way probably as a species would enjoy society is that we acknowledge it as a conscious performance. Do you know? That means we're acknowledging like all those actors on the stage, they all know it's an act, yet they go along with it. Because civilization deserves a face. So the body, the mind of the civilization, that means the subject, the evolution of subjects on this planet, the evolution of objects on this planet, and the evolution of really how we are treating the unknown. And honesty is the foundation of any eternal structure. That's the first brick. You gotta look at this life and be honest with how much you care for it, really what your values is. And then when you're honest, you're finding a state where you don't have to put an effort to be anything. So there is so much reserves of energy. The dishonest person is probably extremely tired. So, yeah, that would be my response. We need fertile soil. We need a new start. We need to. We're gonna look at civilization 1.0, and we're gonna be like, okay, either we can change it or we can't. And if we can't change civilization 1.0, we just build civilization 2.0 somewhere else. And what does that mean? That means literally while we're living in one kind of civilization, we start another kind of civilization, and then we have a choice on whether we want to remain in the old civilization or the new one. And what I mean by a civilization is just how well we can use all the tools at our disposal to develop a global network where the inner realms or people are constantly updating. And I keep getting this inner vision of this kind of infusion of the school of Athens with a gladiator arena where we have created this sort of majestic. We have dedicated this majestic building. Do you know that is like the Colosseum, next level giant Colosseum? Imagine we built, you know, as a species. I even had this idea of we should build giant statues in streets to inspire people. A sort of gladiator idea where the greatest thoughts are challenging the greatest thoughts to have the ultimate filter of the most efficient thought for the civilization. We have to build an advanced network, and pretty much here's the idea. Even in regards to business, it is this. That means if somebody asks you, what's the best kind of business to own? One that is self sustaining and at least has some sort of speed of improvement. Now, and it really, believe it or not, who you choose to compete with or what arena you choose to enter suggests what kind of warrior you are, what kind of value you even have in the marketplace. Because on some level, all of consumerism is perceiving an object and being like, what does this mean? You know, that means we are wondrous creatures, we're explorers. And the reason we're fascinated by TV is not just because of the acting or the imagery or the color, because we want to see more. We want to, we are, the body digests food, the mind digests information and constantly realigns to how am I in a formation, how am I in this way. It's like when I even see women, they're way more sensitive than men, for example, to their kind of their appearance. It's as if they are constantly aware of the mirror is like an out of body viewpoint. It's a view that it's not naturally there, you know. So it's kind of like the person who's aware of, I don't know, what is the saying, like mustard on their face. The person who's aware of that, that means they have an out of their first person viewpoint of their eyes awareness of how they appear, for example. And what's even more fascinating, we go on our lives identifying with names, with the subjects, with the character in our own story. But here's the fascinating thing: the character is not a thing. The ideas you entertain, the thoughts that come and go, they're not objects. But it doesn't mean they don't have design and they don't have shape. They're just not objects. That means I can imagine, like, I don't know, a pizza, and I can't grab a slice from that pizza, though. It's in my inner realms. Do you see what I'm saying? So the inner realms has design, but it is not an object. So what are we if we have access to a view that's not an object? And that's the mystery of consciousness, which every human being dares to at least tackle that question once. It's the most honorable thing you can do. Wonder about what this world was before either the world closes its eyes first or we do. The world closing its eyes like asteroid hitting Earth, you know? We closing our eyes, walking the lifetime and wondering about where the unknown will go, how far knowledge will go. Because you need to kind of engage some sort of game. You see that situation where, for example, in the movie Castaway, what's his name? Tom Hanks was playing that guy, and Wilson was like the volleyball face. And I was wondering, why is this dude, in some sense, why is the volleyball face there? And there's different angles. Of course, it's how the person is trying to maintain some sort of humanity, but the way they're maintaining their humanity is that the person lets themselves get lost in that game. That means the dude knew he was talking to a volleyball, but because he was so alone, he had created a relationship with the object, as if he had literally done what young children do with teddy bears. You know, they see the teddy bear as their best friend. It's like my teddy bear, you know. In that moment, his psychology was so alone that it had reverted to a sort of teddy bear stage, where it's like, well, sad, you know, like that level of kind of intimacy with an object, with the symbol that object represented in the inner realms of that character in Castaway, the film. Anyways, guys, if there's more questions, keep them up. I'm going to be around for 5 more minutes. Let me see, there's probably a train of thought quote out there. Let's see, train of thought. Quote. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go into a quote tunnel, guys, of different people who have used the term train of thought. Joseph Fort Newton. Every person has a train of thought in which they travel when they are alone. The dignity and nobility of their life, as well as their happiness, depend upon the direction in which that train is going, the baggage it carries, and the scenery through which it travels. Asger Jorn says a creative train of thought is set off by the unexpected, the unknown, the accidental, the disorderly, the absurd, the impossible. Yeah, this guy is a good philosopher that has a good awareness of philosophy. Marcus Aurelius says, your mind will be like its habitual thoughts, for the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Soak it then in such trains of thoughts as, for example, where life is possible at all, a right life is possible. Okay, guys, trains of thought back then, the concept of a train wasn't there. So that part of the quote's questionable. Anyways, let's move on. Robert Brault. All my life I've wanted, just once, to say something clever without losing my train of thought. He just did, you know. Lauren Kate says the train of thought was heading straight for Pity City, and she wanted to get off. Wow, exactly. This is an incredible quote from Lauren Kate. I'm just going to paste it, because it's definitely some trains of thought. If you're wise, you get off them. That means you stop perceiving yourself in the inefficiency when you realize that's the same time the efficiency could happen. Sergio Aragones says, when sadness happens in the middle of work, I separate my personal grief from my train of thought. Joseph Fort Newton again. Every man has a train of thought on which he rides when he is alone. Okay. Let's repeat. Lawrence J. Peter. Real constructive mental power lies in the creative thought that shapes your destiny, and your hour-by-hour mental conduct produces power for change in your life. Develop a train of thought on which to ride. The nobility of your life, as well as your happiness, depends upon the direction in which that train of thought is going. James Allen. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results on the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly yet surely shape his circumstances. Chrissy Jami. Of course, in our train of thought, we would all like to think we're on the right track, or at least the same railroad company has the right track. Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. A new formula which suddenly emerges in our consciousness has its roots in long trains of thought. It is virtually old when it first makes its appearance among the recognized growths of our intellect. That's kind of true. It's like a thought isn't alone. So therefore the modern and the archaic are kind of infused in the psychological space, let's say, in the psyche. James H. Austin. The Zen meditative approach has a simple, unstated premise. Moods and attitudes shape, determine what we think and perceive. If we feel happy, we tend to develop certain trains of thought. If we feel sad or angry, still others. Okay, wait, let me read that again. The Zen meditative approach has a simple, unstated premise. Moods and attitudes shape, determine what we think and perceive. So the shape of your mood and attitudes determine what you think and perceive. If we feel happy, we tend to develop certain trains of thought. If we feel sad or angry, still others. But suppose, so that means there's other train of thoughts, but suppose with training we become non-attached to distractions and learn to dampen these wild emotional swings on either side of equanimity, then we can enter the serene awareness, which is the natural soil for positive, spontaneous personal growth, often called spiritual growth. Guys, before the last sentence, he's literally giving the algorithm. He's pretty much saying what I was trying to say. You know? That exactly, there is, he says, but suppose with training, we become non-attached to distractions. So the distractions, it doesn't matter if they distract you, you're not attached to the distraction. It comes and goes. And learn to dampen these wild emotional swings on either side of equanimity. What a great author. Chrissy Jami says again, Christianity, like genius, is one of the hardest concepts to forgive. We hear what we want to hear and accept what we want to accept, for the most part, simply because there's nothing more offensive than feeling like you have to reevaluate your own train of thought and purpose in life. You have to die to an extent in your hunger for faith, for wisdom, and quite frankly, most people aren't ready to die. Intense. Anna Letitia Barbal says, let us confess the truth, humiliating to human pride. A very small part only of the options of the coolest philosopher are the result of fair reasoning. The rest are formed by his education, his temperament, by the age in which he lives, by trains of thought directed to a particular track through some accidental association, in short, by prejudice. Let me tell you what it is. It's not prejudice, it's complexity. It's literally as the speed of looking or going towards something increases, the relationship with time slows down. So when you run towards something, it's like the less further you are from it. You know? I don't know how to say it. But anyways, I feel it's just complexity. We gotta pilot through simple states and complex states, but the attention is attention. Sylvia Townsend Warner. One reason my memory decays is that I have 3 cats, also loving and insistent that they play cat's cradle with every train of thought. They drove me distracted while I was having influenza, gazing at me with large eyes and saying, "Oh Sylvia, you're so ill, you'll soon be dead, and who will feed us then? Feed us now." Intense. That's an intense passage. You know, every author is kind of bleeding their life through their words, you know. Frederick Lenz. Even if you're focusing on a chakra, you don't want to do that for the whole period of meditation. There should be a point where you let go, settle down, get off the train of thought for a while. Let me tell you, you got to be you got to let thoughts like a chess game move first before you move. That's the whole point of meditation, I find. The return to that still center, still silent center. Mary Wollstonecraft says, an immoderate fondness for dress, for pleasure, and for sway are the passions of savages, the passions that occupy those uncivilized beings who have not yet extended the dominion of the mind or even learned to think with the energy necessary to concatenate the abstract train of thought which produces principles. That women from their education and the present state of civilized life are in the same condition cannot be controverted. Cannot be controverted. You see, guys, the issue is that we are not just our biological being. We are also our environment and how we are in our environment. And so all of these, and whatever you want to build in this life, you need space first, and then you need, you can act in that space, you know? So I, for example, sit down, I get a vision in my inner realms, I perceive something in my inner realms, then I can endlessly just talk, you know, in accordance to that. Anyways, guys, there's lightning. Seems like Thor's gone for a walk. So anyways, I'm going to end the talk here. Thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and all.